Over the last couple of months, millions of us have had to work from home in some way, shape or form. And as we look to a future where potentially we don't have to do that quite as much, it's interesting to note that Jack Dorsey, who is the co-founder of Twitter and also a payment platform known as Square, has actually committed to keeping an option to work from home for their employees into the future. And the question is, what did we learn from all of this? This last couple of months where we've all been experimenting with making home life and work life coexist, are there things we should keep in the future? Are there things that we should absolutely abandon in the future? We have Cam Wilson of BuzzFeed joining us and Tegan Jones, the editor of Gizmodo. Tegan, for you, out of this experience, what would you keep and what would you like to let go of?
You know, I'm coming from a very privileged position with my job as a writer. I can theoretically do that from anywhere with an internet connection. So even before COVID, I was a big advocate for being able to work from home. There's some days where you just need to not be in an office environment, for whatever reason, to write, to test things, whatever. So for me, having a bunch of companies being forced to rethink how they work with their people and being forced to being a little bit more flexible, I think can be positive and potentially has been positive. They couldn't just use the excuse of, well, it can't be done, because they had to do it. So I would hope that, moving forward, we will see a little bit more flexibility in the workplace, not just, for people like me who might want to just work in their pajamas, but for people who need flexibility for really real reasons, whether it's their family or mobility or special needs, whatever it happens to be. I would really like that to carry on because we've proven that it can be done.
How about you, Cam?
This whole pandemic has really shattered the illusion that a lot of us need to be in the office. And I think we'll be better off for that. Just the fact that we all don't have to, or a lot of us don't have to go to the cities, all be in public transport at the same time, trying to get to the same place at the same time, I think has real benefits for everyone. It's just kind of great being around my home now that things are opening up and I can kind of support local businesses. I was speaking to a colleague in the US who was telling me about a conversation he had with someone in Silicon Valley. And they were saying, look, we've found that working from home, productivity has dropped a bit. But we also found that, by allowing people to stay at home, and this is something that we did before the pandemic, something we've done for a while, it's a much easier thing for people working there. And compared to other companies who say you've got to come in, they actually found that it was a great way to keep people happy because, you can kind of dictate your lifestyle. And so, you're much more, motivated. Even if maybe productivity kind of drops a bit, you're more likely to hang around and contribute to the company for a while. My ideal situation would be I could work from home a couple of days a week and go in when I need to. So, when I have big meetings, when I know I need to work quickly, collaboratively with someone. But, really kind of, change that idea that, that your boss feels like, to make sure you're doing something, you have to be literally in front of them. That's not really, a good way of managing, in my opinion. I think the best way is to be like, do whatever you have to do and let's set targets and let's figure out ways to make sure you're doing what you're doing without you having to physically be in the space.
Yeah, I love working from home. It's just working from home and also parenting 2 children under 7. What are the sorts of things we would need to change to make working from home more viable long term? Socially, in terms of how, our expectations around productivity, also just the technology itself. What are the sorts of things we'd need to change, Tegan, to make it viable?
I think one of the first things that had to be done over the last couple of months was the government and NBN Co in particular working together to be able to allow ISPs to have, more bandwidth so they could handle the amount of stress on their individual systems. I won't get into all the tech around it because it's a little bit more complicated than that, but essentially being able to have more people concurrently on the networks. So I think that more investment in broadband, 5G technology, that kind of stuff would be the top of my priority list, because if you have a lot of people working from home, they need to be able to do that effectively, especially if they're dealing with things like video, large files, that kind of thing. So another thing that's, potentially more boring topic, but really important is, making sure that people aren't actually hurting themselves in the home as well. So when I say that, I mean, I've got a really bad neck. It has been a whole lot worse since being in isolation just because of the desk chair setup that I have. So being really mindful of that kind of stuff as well.
I've been having some RSI in my right hand, so I've switched to a left hand using a touchpad.
Can I ask you something as well, Cam? I don't know if this is just me, but when you worked from home before and maybe during the pandemic as well, did you ever feel like you had to really prove that you were working when working from home, just because there is perhaps that mentality that you could be skiving off a little bit if you're not in the office?
Yeah, look, I've definitely gone for like lunches and had my phone in my pocket and like responded to like some messages to Seam while I'm at my desk. By the way, the telltale sign is when your letters start auto-correcting because your iPhone keypad does that and your keyboard doesn't. So if you do that, make sure you just don't capitalize everything. You know, like there is that expectation, but if people just do it more often, there's no reason why it shouldn't change. Like I honestly think it's a managerial thing as well. If your boss realizes that the way that you're most productive isn't necessarily that you're sitting at your desk at all times during the day, but it's the output that you have, well, that's the kind of best way to manage someone rather than these kind of like rote instructions about, you know, being a worker robot.
There is lots more of this in the podcast. If you download this show, we're also talking about some recent security scares in government at various different levels in Australia. So do check out the podcast, and I will catch you next time on Download This Show.